In the United States of America, we have a really bad habit of dealing with consequences and outcomes instead of dealing with the root cause of anything. In this case, we think that abortion is the solution to all of our sexual problems instead of anybody engaging in any kind of preventative measures. And so that's where we are today. And so my name is Nefreteri. This is the third video that I'm doing in my series about abortion. And so as promised, this one is about education, because education is one of the best ways for prevention. But I don't just mean sex education, all education, gaining information about what's going on. And right here in one concise place, I'm going to do it for you. So usually when people think about education, they think about an organized institution like a school building. And while that is part of it, education also involves just receiving knowledge from other people, which possibly in the beginning of your life should be your parents. And so there has been a failure of parents to bestow certain knowledge on their kids so that they can progress in life. I actually looked up a definition for parenting because I thought it was so funny. The primary purpose of parenting is to raise fully functional adults who can take care of themselves and make a positive contribution to society. And I found that from Psych Central. And that says so much about what a parent should be doing to raise the kids that they bring into this world. I'm not going to lean into it too much because I did actually make a video about this, and I think the failures of all generations of parents to their kids have done. But I do want to talk about that time period of like teenagers to 20s, because that's where you start to see pregnancies. That's where people start hooking up. Well, really primarily in college, but it starts back in adolescence, because there's something that I just think is very strange that goes on in high school, and it's dating. Dating dominates the scene of high school, and from when I was there and from what I remember, and I remember other people's relationships and other people's breakups. That's like how tumultuous and traumatic they were, that I could actually remember them. And I'm sure there are many people who have these experiences as well. And you almost remember them more than you remember the things that you learned like in the classroom. So high school seems to be dominated by this. And I always ask, why? Why does anybody ever ask their kids why they want to date? Everybody just seems to accept it from generation to generation. Now, I've met people who they wouldn't even have an opinion on this because they've never thought about it. They're just like, oh yeah, that's just what you do. And I think that's just rather silly, because that sets kids up for failure going forward. I don't think most kids gain positive relationship advice and experiences from their high school love lives, if you wish. And I'm not talking about the few outliers. I know they exist. There are some people who have found their high school sweethearts. I know. But there are also some people who dated about 15 different people in high school. What do you think happens to them later on in life? They're obviously already showing signs of attachment and needing validation from people. That goes on later on in life, especially if it's not corrected. And I understand that not many parents can correct it, especially if they haven't fixed their own love lives. And so this almost becomes a form of generational trauma that goes down and down and down. And so you get these kids, they go off to college, and college, as we all know, is like freedom for people. And so yes, it's supposed to be a center for higher learning, and maybe high school can prepare you for that from the academic side, but this is the first time that these kids are off by themselves with no parents. And so you take in the culture, you take in things from the people who are around you. So they're heavily influenced by their friends. The culture now, social media is super prevalent for that age, and obviously the university itself and whatever that university pumps out, depending on which way they lean, because universities all lean a certain way. And so hookup culture is highly, highly prevalent in the college system. And that is super problematic because it's hookup culture, but it's not necessarily reality. And so it's out there in the air. You feel like you're missing out. You have this major FOMO that everybody else is hooking up and they're getting laid and you're not. And so you get people who probably engage in behaviors that they're not even comfortable with. And they end up in situations that they'd rather not be in. And then next thing you know, they're having regretful situations. And also in that area is alcohol. Now, I'm not here to tell you to become a teetotaler, but I was a bartender for 13 years. I don't think anything really positive about alcohol unless you are a person who can actually definitively stop after like 1 or 2 drinks. If you can do that, then drink. But if you are one of those people who drink to get drunk, there's just really nothing positive to it. And this is where, I know for a fact, this is where a lot of women end up in situations that they would rather not be in, and bad things happen. Not just necessarily getting pregnant, but also for your own mental health. You wake up the next day and you don't know what happened to you, and you're like, oh my goodness, what happened, and why do I feel so guilty? Why do I feel so much shame? Probably just around the fact that you have no idea what took place, and you say, well, it wasn't with my consent, but you were drunk. And so there's a level of personal responsibility that we all need to have. And I think that is something that the pro-choice matrix would like you to not have. They would like you to cast off this idea of any form of personal responsibility, and we can put blame on everybody and everything else in the world. Because they also believe that with regards to sex, it is unfair that women carry such a burden of the responsibility of contraceptives. Now, I call this the pro-choice matrix because it almost is like an alternate reality. You need to understand something. Life's not fair. It just is not fair. And it's something that we need to acknowledge. And I think right now we're looking for equality between the sexes or equality in general. But if you don't know what equality looks like, then how can you seek it? And so what you think it looks like, or what we're seeing right now with the pro-choice side, is they believe that abortion is necessary so that women don't have the responsibility of having a child just like a man. And that's the equality they believe comes from it. I don't know why we have to go that route, because it doesn't solve the problem of being pregnant, and it also doesn't solve the problem of the grief and everything else that comes with it, the fact that you have to have an abortion and what that does to your body, what the hormones, the procedure, all of it. So why don't we just deal with prevention? But that upsets these advocates because they say, well, this is the problem. Why don't men have to deal with the burden and responsibility that women do? And that's why I say it's like an alternate reality, because you need to accept certain things. You have to accept them, and then you have to move on, right? There's no point in saying, okay, I accept it, and then whining about it. You can't change it. And so women go out and they write these articles, and they're like, it's time for men to step up and bear the burden. It takes two. It's two people who need, and it's just like, who are you preaching to? The men who are sleeping with women and then bouncing, most of these guys are non-commitment types anyway. Most of them were just in it so that they could have their sexual experience, their sexual gratification, and then leave. So how are you going to tell them, hey, you need to wrap it up, you need to be responsible? I think we're being a little bit too idealistic with that mindset. And so we really have to let that go, and we need to assume the responsibility for ourselves. Okay? So in my past, I haven't really suffered many of these issues, but it's because I didn't allow a man to have this kind of power over me. And you see, a woman, what's being spoken to you is you're being told that this abortion is like your agency, it's your autonomy. But the way I see it is my agency is the ability to tell a man no. Now, I'm not talking about sexual assault. I'm not talking about coercion. And there are situations that women put themselves in that increase coercion. And anything with alcohol does that. So you can remove yourself from a lot of these situations and make yourself safer. But it really just depends on what you think of yourself. I'm going to be real. Now, I understand some people were invalidated by their parents or the people that they were around when they were younger, and so they go out to college and they search for it in other people, and it's very unhealthy, and it is a huge problem. But women are learning the hard way, and it would just be better if if there was somebody who told them, or if there was somebody that they would listen to and realize that that hookup culture in general, it hurts both men and women, but women always come out the worst for wear. It always hurts women more because both men and women are equal, if you didn't know that, but we are different, and we have different biology, we are similar but different in the mind. And so this is another thing. Pro-choice people, they don't like the fact. I don't get it. I don't get it. We'll acknowledge biology, but then when it doesn't fit us, we'll just throw it out. And so people are realizing, yes, we are different. And so we need to act appropriately for that. Now, I don't believe men can just go out and sleep with random people and not feel anything. I think after a while they can deaden themselves to it for sure, but I don't think that that's initially how it really is. It could be for some, but I still, from what I know about men want to be loved as well. They're human. They want love as well, and men love love. So I'll just quickly insert this for people who don't know this, because right now there's a lot of hate from both sides, and I think people aren't even open to hearing the other side, and they don't even think that they have a say in the debate, but I'm just going to put it in here anyway. So the equality of men and women is different. In this case, women hold the keys to a relationship, and men hold the keys to commitment. They are different, but they are parts of the same thing. And so we want to change this, but how about we just accept reality and work with it? And so back in around the 1700s, the 18th century, women, instead of going through arranged marriage courtships, were able to choose their own spouses. So a man, it wasn't dating like today, but a man had to woo a woman and had to court her for marriage. And so women did have choice. And so if a woman was considered really desirable in the society, she would have a lot of offers and she could choose. And so a man had to be on it. There's the keys to the relationship. A woman could say no and she could say yes, and a man would be very happy. And now that is thrown out, that idea is. And let me just explain the male part. So men, they have the keys to commitment and marriage. There are groups that want to throw that out as well, super feminist, and they want to be like, oh, a woman can ask a man to marry him. She can. What do you think the reaction will be to a man who really is like a man? First of all, it's a male choice because men view marriage in a specific kind of way. They see it as a super duper important commitment. And women may feel like men don't want to make commitment and that they don't understand why a man doesn't want to make a commitment, but I can explain that, and you may know this, and this is another problem. They consider it to be a hypocrisy, but it's not. You just have to accept some realities, and here it is. So what women get upset with is they say a man wants a woman that they can have sex with. They want to have sex with this woman immediately, right? But then when they get together and they find out that this woman has been with multiple men, they get really upset and they're like, oh, she's a loose woman, and then they have no interest. They say it's unfair. What the hypocrisy? Well, maybe you need to understand more the ideology. Men are visual, and yes, men want to have sex. Yes, I know women do too. But the sex drive, yes, okay, I know women are going to say they have a strong sex drive as well. But men have a sex drive made to like procreate. And so, yes, they are driven by the chase. That's where a woman, you get the agency and the autonomy. You get to say no or yes. And they know this. And so they like the chase, and yes, they want to have sex with you if they're sexually attracted to you, but you don't have to just sleep with them. They would like for you to say no. Believe it or not, they really would. It ups you in their book, but it's not going to up you in their book if they find out that, you know, their best friend has slept with you and other people in the neighborhood. No, it's not, because then they're going to say, oh, you're just holding out on me. But if that never comes to light, or it's not even an issue, you go up so high in a man's book. Now, this may upset you. I am sorry. These are the kind of realities that you just have to accept. Men really do like more of a chaste woman. I'm not saying that they want a prude woman. I said a chaste woman. They want a virtuous woman. They do. If they're going to commit to a woman with their resources and their life and say, oh, I'm going to be, you know, in a committed relationship with this one woman. Yeah, they want a freaky deaky. Sure they do. Of course they do. But that doesn't mean they want you to be freaky with everybody in the neighborhood. And so it's just something you have to accept. But you have the right to say no. I'm so sorry, women. I think the issue comes down to like self-respect. Like, I wasn't really in these situations because I really value myself. And so I said, why do I want these men using me? But you see, the ideology of sex is very changed now. We're acting like we're animals, and you're just like, oh man, I've got needs. I know it's a need, but people are making their sex drive seem like it's a need on par with food, water, and oxygen. And it's just not. I mean, there are some people who act like they can't go without every single day. That to me is crazy, because that means that you need sex more than you need water. Water, you can at least go 3 days before, you're in the hospital or dead. But people are acting like they just gotta have it every day. That to me sounds like an animal who lacks self-control. It doesn't sound to me like you're a man who has a high sex drive. It sounds like you lack control. Or a woman, if you wish. So that's something that we need to take into consideration. Yes, it may be a biological need, but you don't need to sleep with somebody you just meet. Also, I don't even know how the act takes place. Like, so many people are so shy in person, but then you're taking your clothes off with somebody you barely know. And then, in the pro-choice matrix, You're expecting this person that you barely know to respect you, to not lie to you, and to be like, oh, uh, does that feel okay? Are you okay? But I've been reading about it. Hookup culture, you're not even supposed to look people in the eyes. You're not supposed to like talk to them afterwards because you don't want to show like any kind of attachment. You just want it to be like a one and done and you're out. So you have two people apparently looking for different things, but women are always looking for different things. The majority of women are not looking for flings. They want to be in a relationship. But it's almost like they're conceding and they're giving into men because they think that's how you're going to get them. Actually, that's not how you're going to get them. Women, chivalry died not because of men, but because of staunch feminist women. As I said before, men love to be in love, and men also love loving women. They do. I'm not talking about that group of people who are like epically toxic. I'm not talking about like criminals either. I'm talking about men. Men have always really loved women. And so it is women, it is up to us to put the boundary and let them know, hey, this is it. You don't cross this. But a man has always really loved being in love with a woman and taking care of her and bestowing care upon her. And when you're in this committed relationship that has love, then another problem that people have, the orgasm disparity or inequality, ceases to exist. Because that's just a biological fact. And we can't get around it. And so you have to ask questions. Why does it take a woman so much longer to orgasm than a man? Well, maybe because we were designed for the man to spend more time and take care of the woman that he's with and make sure that she's loved and she feels cared for and she trusts him. But you see, that's not what we get from watching movies. You watch a movie and a woman doesn't even get foreplay, and in two minutes, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And so that's what you think you can do. And so I think both sides have been very much duped by the hookup culture, and many of them are actually quite tired. Before we were having men identifying as incels, involuntarily celibate, but what we have now are voluntarily celibate people. Many people are opting out for all different kinds of reasons. So a lot of them are saying that they want personal growth or self-development. Maybe they just want to take time to get to know themselves. Many people are very tired of the dating industry in general, the whole gamification of the dating apps, and they're sick of being ghosted and catfish and every other word that you can think of. And a lot of women, I definitely hear from women that they're just happy that they finally have like inner peace, and they're making a distinction, a comparison. They are actually saying, I would rather be alone than be with a man who ruins my life. And so that mindset bothers me, because I know for a fact most people would love to be in a loving relationship, but they're making a comparison. It's either this evil or this, and so I don't want that, so I'm going to go with being alone. And so that's where we've ended up. But if you don't believe me, I was reading in Women's Health magazine. They did a whole article about how voluntary celibacy is on the rise, and it has nothing to do with religion. It is the opting out. And so I wanted to read to you some of the things that I actually saw. So they did an interview with a woman, and this is what she said. She said she first gave up on sex in 2021 after learning that a few of her pandemic hookups had lied to her about the scale of their COVID interactions. Then after Roe versus Wade was overturned, she began considering the risk of dating, nervous that she'd need emergency reproductive care as she frequently travels to states with restrictive abortion bans for work. Then a little bit farther down, she said, it all really made me reconsider why I was having sex, what I was getting out of it, and what in the future I would need to feel safe. Transparently, ever since, I haven't felt the need. Some people, it upsets them. They say Roe versus Wade ruined things right there. Like, look, like women are actually opting out of sex. I look at that and I say, I heard some really great things that she just said, and I'm quite happy with them. They're stopping, women are stopping, and they're thinking about, why am I even doing that? What am I getting out of it? Has my life been better? And I said, that's fantastic. We have made sex into such a casual interaction that we've forgotten that it is something that you should think about before you engage in. And if Roe versus Wade being overturned has allowed women to slow down and say, is this somebody that I want to sleep with? What about the risk involved? There's so many risks involved, and it's not just physical. It's your mental health as well. It's your emotional health as well. And so some people, it upsets them. They say, oh, look, the Christians are getting what they want. Maybe it's just what the general public needs. Okay? We need to have less of a flippant attitude towards sex and realizing the implications it has on people's mental health, emotional, physical, and everything else, and what it has on society at large. And so this also applies to men. There are less men opting out. It's probably I think it was 1 in 10, and for women it was 1 in 6, but it goes both ways. And so I think it's that kind of education you need to know. So everybody should think about this. Think about who you're sleeping with and why you're sleeping with them. Are you doing it for what purpose? Are you doing it because you're seeking validation? Are you doing it because you feel lonely? Are you doing it because you just want sexual pleasure? If that's the case, you need to start thinking about other people's feelings. I don't care about the lie about consent. People consent to do a lot of things, and that doesn't think about who they are as a person. Because these women are leaving and they're saying, did this person think about me? Are they going to call me? Did they enjoy it? There's so many questions. And you know what? If you were in a loving relationship, you could just have that conversation. But when you just get in bed with each other and then you head out, then what happens? Nothing. And then if a woman ends up with a child, can she really expect that man to be involved in her life? And then does that man have a say? My next episode, I am going to talk more about men. I'm going to talk about what women really want in general, and the push is for gender equality. And so I will talk about men more in that, because I don't want to feel like I am disparaging one gender over the other or condemning anybody. It involves two groups of people. I hope you learned something. If you did, please comment, leave me a comment, or subscribe. Thank you so much, guys.
I've been educated. My enemies make sure